As a visual aid, I put this diagram up here so that I can do a quick look over here, because it's going to take me a little while to get used to all of this. So we have our mash cycle and our Sjporr cycle set up. Got the boil kettle, mash tun, and HLT, pump 1 and pump 2. Pump 1 is going to pull the wort out of the mash tun through the Herms coil and back into the mash tun. Pump 2 is going to run out of the HLT and back into the HLT to maintain that temperature. Once we're done with the mash, we'll move over here to the Sjporr cycle. Again, boil kettle, mash tun, HLT. So we'll be moving the line some. So now we're going to be pulling out of the mash tun and into the boil kettle with pump 1. Pump 2, we'll be pulling the water out of the HLT into the pump, into the Herms coil, out of the Herms coil, and into the auto sparge. So that serves two purposes. One, I'm doing my sparge, and two, it actually cleans out my line. So the wort will be cleared out of that, which will clean it up real nice. And then what I can also do is, when I'm roll pulling, I can come down here to pump 1, and just come out of pump 1 and go back into the, out of the boil kettle and back into the boil kettle and do a whirlpool. So that'll work out pretty good. When I initially set up, I was going to pull out of the boil kettle, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get all of my water out of the HLT. So I'm going to put my, I'll fill the HLT up, and I'll just do the mash. If I need to put 8 gallons of water, is my strike water, I'll do the math. 15 minus 8 is 7, so I should have 7 gallons left. Pull that water out and go right into the mash tun. I'll do an underlay, and then I'll set this setup. I have to refill I'll have to refill the HLT, because I need to make sure that the water is up over top of the very top coil. Because as I am mashing, the burner in the HLT will maintain the temperature that I want, and I'll be able to circulate that water through the HLT. So I'm doing an official water test, heat test, and the whole 9 yards. So what I did was I set my controller up to 168 degrees. I'm thinking, all right, so normally on my old system, if I was, actually I can do this too. That'll help keep the heat in. So on my old system, what I did was when I went to dough in, I'd heat up to like 168 degrees, between 164 and 168. And then that was my strike temperature. So that's what I'm doing right now. 168 degrees is what I set it at. Actual temperature now, it's up to 81, so I'm almost halfway there. I am running pump number 2, which is my on-off pump. All I'm doing is circulating this water over the boil coil. So I'm pulling the water out of the pot, and I'm going right back in the top of the pot. And I'm reading the temperature over there as well. So I'm at 82, that says 81, so they're pretty close, which is really cool. So what I'm going to do next is, once I hit 168 degrees, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to mimic that I'm doing a brew day. And I'm going to just set my lines up to pull my water out of the HLT and go ahead and put it in the mash tun. So we'll see how long this takes. Update. I set my temperature controller as if I'm doughing in. And this is on my old system. I'm sure this is all going to change. I'm not going to go this hot because I'm not sure it's going to work. I'll probably dough in at like 160-ish. Because the nice thing about this system is, if I dough in light, I can bring a temperature up no problem. So I'd rather be on the lighter side than on the hot side. So I set my HLT up to 168. So it went up to 168. It's actually still on. But what I did was I need to lower my set point from 152 and set it. Now I'm going to let that draw down. That's going to start dropping off. And what I'm doing right now is I'm going to bring the water level up. Again, this is all water test. I'm pretending that I'm underlaying. So I moved my hose over to here to underlay in, and I want to bring it until I'm above my mash temperature probe, and it brings my my auto sparge up. So I'm just using water. I just pulled what? 14 from 6 is 8, right? Yeah, 8. So I just pulled 8 gallons over into the mash tun, which is cool, so that's good. I want to fill this back up. I set my temperature for the HLT back at 152 as if I'm going to be mashing. So right now, you know, what I could have done in the meantime was I could have actually just started adding water right away. So now I've got to heat this back up again. Yep. Cool. So, alright. So what I'm going to do, I want to fill this back up above the coils. This is where I want it. I'm going to readjust my my hoses so that they're set up to recirculate the water and be ready to actually start doing the mash. Cool. This is working. Alright, so right now I am simulating mash. So one of the things I did not take into consideration when doing this test was I was putting water in the mash tun with no grains. So I had to mess around with the water. I had to take some water out, put some cold water in to try and get my temperature down for the element to kick back on again. So right now we are theoretically mashing. So my mash temperature, I have it set to 152. So right now we're equalizing out between the hot liquor tank and the mash tun. So 148, 145, not bad. The pump, I actually have it set up to where my float is just up the whole way. And so it's fine. It's just recirculating the water around. Once I get it to where it actually levels out, I'm going to let it act like it's mashing for a couple minutes. I'm not really worried about it. And then I'm going to simulate a sparge. So I'm going to set my float to where it's just floating on top of the water, and we'll start to run water over it into the oil kettle. So far pretty good. The only issue I had was, and of course it was never used before, so this is the first time we're actually running water through the Herms coil. There's a lot of air in there, so I had to get that air out, so it kind of fought with me a little bit. But we seem to be going pretty good. I've got a good flow rate right now. Really good flow rate. Once everything kind of, what I want it to do is kind of kick off. I want to see what it does. So, yeah, I'm digging this. This is pretty cool so far. I'm back to circulating the water in the HLT. I'm just running it around so that we're constantly, that temperature is all, the liquid all the time. And I had to make sure I had enough water in the mash tun to get above the probe so that it's giving me a fairly accurate reading. I don't have a probe in here. I took it out. So I'm going solely off of that probe. There's enough there. So we should be pretty good. We're starting to equalize out right now. This is heating up. It's going to bring this temperature up. What I want to see is it at 152 for a little while. So far, so good. I'm figuring it out. Yeah. So right now what I'm doing is simulating the sparge. So I'm pulling the water out of the mash tun into the boil kettle. So we'll just say that we're mashing out at 166. It's just a random number. Yeah, and I'm actually, okay, so I need to give myself more water here. I actually ran my mash tun down too far. So I want to give myself more water. I want to back this guy off some. So I'm going to catch my sparks back up. Again, this is all just water. So right now I still have my hock in for the HLT. Here in a couple minutes, I'm going to actually pull the hock out for the HLT and put the boil kettle in, because I won't need this anymore. So here's where I'm at right now with the water test. All the water is out of the HLT and the mash tun. Actually, they're all cleaned. I got all the water out of them. The hoses are here drying. I have this set up for the whirlpool on pump number 1, or pump number 2, which is an on-off pump. So right now I'm bringing this up to a boil. We are pretty close to a boil right now. The EBC is actually reading the HLT temperature, which it's at 87 degrees. It's never going to hit, its temperature, its set point. So what I'll do is, once this gets to a boil, I'll start to dial this back to percentage-wise, and I'll be able to dial in my boil. So right now, it looks like actually all of the steam is going right out the window, which is nice. Works out pretty good. There's some coming up here, but we don't have near the heat in this brew house that I had with using propane. Oh my God. This is a world of difference. So what I want to do, I want to get it to a boil. I want to control that boil. See where my percentage is. Because right now I'm at 100%. See where my percentage is. That way it kind of gives me an idea on where my percentage should be when I'm boiling for a beer. Far out. So, Gil, sit you over there. The wet test went fantastic. I learned a bunch, and I'm ready for brew day. I have one fix. I need to put some more tape on this one fitting. Everything else is good. Yeah, I can do a brew day. I am excited to do a brew day. So that'll be the next part, the next adventure. Everything's cleaned up. I mean, so I did this, simulated everything. The only thing I didn't do, it's 8:30 right now. I started this around 4 o'clock. So about 4 hours on the wet test. And that was, I brought it up to a boil, I mashed out, I circulated, I did everything that you would do through a brew day, 4 hours time, not knowing what I'm doing. So I'm excited. I'm ready to dive into a brew day. I am really ready to dive into a brew day. So, a little bit of mess, a little bit of water here and there. Not horrible though. Can't complain. Had I thought a little bit more, I would have actually brought these pumps closer out to the edge of my shelf I made for them, but it's going to work just as well where it's at right now. So I'm okay with that. Matter of fact, if I wanted to, I could just do what I'm doing right there. Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm ready. I'm ready for a brew day. Cheers.